Hi, everybody. So today we're going to talk about how the DNA actually makes you look like you do. I've been telling you that's what we were going to do, but you first need to know the structure of DNA. We've got that double helix DNA. I then said, but you also need to know the structure of mRNA, that straight RNA that has every 3 bases as a codon. And then you needed to know the folded up tRNA that has the 3 bases that hang off at the bottom that are an anticodon. I'm also going to remind you there's another player. We have DNA, we have mRNA, we have tRNA, but we also have a fourth player, which we learned about back in the fall, which is proteins. And I want you to remember that proteins are made up of long chains of amino acids. So those are the 4 players. We've got DNA, mRNA, tRNA, and proteins made of amino acids. Those 4 things together are what are going to determine or allow your genes to tell you how you look. And I'm going to explain that today. It's an awful lot of pieces to put together. We'll do the best we can with it. So you inherited from your parents a particular order of bases. Your genes may go AAA, CCC, GGG, TTT, where mine will go ACA, GGG, TTT, right? So we may have slightly different orders of bases that we inherited. Somehow that order of bases is going to tell me to have green eyes and maybe tell you to have blue eyes, have different traits. The connection there is something to do with the proteins. So if you look at my eyes are green. That means that the muscle in the eye is actually making a protein that is physically green, and that makes my eyes green. Well, I inherited a gene, a particular order of bases from my mom and dad that instructs me to make a green protein that makes my eyes green. Someone else may have inherited a slightly different order of bases that tells them to put together a protein, a series of amino acids in a particular order. It happens to be brown, and they will have brown eyes. How that happens, we're going to talk about today. So I want you to imagine that this slide is one cell, okay? And here we have an organelle. If you look in there, this blue thing has AAA, TTT, CCC, GGG. Given that information, what kind of molecule are we talking about here? It's a DNA molecule, and you can tell because it has TTT, but it's funny because it's only got 1 strand. So what would be the complementary strand to AAA, TTT, CCC, GGG? It would be TTT, AAA, GGG, CCC. And we can see the A's and T's match, the T's and A's match, the C's and G's match, the G's and C's match. Well, if we have a DNA molecule, what organelle must they be in? This is the nucleus. DNA never, ever, ever leaves the nucleus. It's dangerous out here. There's enzymes, there's all sorts of toxins, there's things that will destroy DNA. And DNA has all the information to make who you are. Absolutely critical. So we don't want to mess with that DNA. That's got to stay safely locked away in the nucleus. But we just said that the DNA is needed to tell you what proteins to make. Are proteins made in a nucleus? Where are proteins made? Stretching our minds back to the cell chapter, they are made in ribosomes. Now, I didn't draw this to scale. Ribosomes are little dots, but we can imagine this is a little dot. Ribosomes are where proteins are made, where amino acids are put together in a particular order to make a protein. The information how to do that is in the nucleus. The information needs to get to the ribosome. The DNA never ever leaves the nucleus, but its information needs to be sent to the ribosome. What molecule have we talked about has a name that would suggest it might be able to carry information as a message from the nucleus to the ribosomes? mRNA. And so what happens is our DNA molecule, which is 2 strands wound around each other, loosely held by hydrogen bonds, unwinds. and it separates, separating at the weak hydrogen bonds, and one of those strands will be used to make an mRNA molecule. So where there is a G, it'll match C. Where there's a C, it'll match G. T matches to A. The only thing that's odd is A matches to T in DNA. What is A going to match to in mRNA? U. So this process happening in the nucleus called transcription is using the DNA, the order of bases inherited by from the parents, to make an mRNA that has all that information embedded in it. And that mRNA can leave the nucleus and travel to where the proteins may take that information inherited from the parents, but still leave the DNA safely locked away in the nucleus. And that mRNA will travel to the ribosome, and it is there that the protein will be made. So we have our DNA all sealed back up together after transcribing, making the mRNA. The mRNA has traveled to ribosomes, and we have these things floating around in the cell. I didn't have them drawn there before because they would have been distracting, but they've been there the whole time. These are molecules that have 3 bases hanging off the bottom called anticodons. So these are transfer RNAs, and they are transferring something to the ribosome. What do you think AA stands for? What do you think the tRNAs are transferring to the ribosomes? What are the parts that need to get to the ribosomes to make a protein? Amino acids. So these tRNAs are carrying amino acids to the ribosomes. So if our first codon on mRNA is UUU, what anticodon would match that? Would GGG fit in there? No. No, AAA would fit, and it would be carrying its amino acid. Well, it turns out that if this is UUU and this is AAA, then this tRNA is carrying a particular amino acid called phenylalanine. That is true whether this is a human being or a bacterium or an oak tree. Every living thing on the planet follows the same code. If this is UUU, then this transfer RNA with the AAA is carrying a particular amino acid called phenylalanine. You don't have to worry about the name of the amino acid, just the fact that if this series of bases is a particular thing, it's going to encode for a particular amino acid. And what anticodon would match AAA, this codon, AAA, what anticodon would match that? UUU. And which tRNA would come in next and match the codon GGG? The anticodon CCC. And then finally, our last one would match. Now we have a series of order of amino acids that was specifically encoded for by the order of bases on the mRNA, which in turn was specifically coded for by the series of bases in the DNA that you inherited from your parents. So the order of bases on the DNA is determining the order of bases on the mRNA, which is determining the order of amino acids brought in by tRNAs, which tells you what protein to make. So if this order of bases is a particular one, these amino acids may be strung together into a green protein. On the other hand, if the base order of bases are different, these amino acids may be strung together into a brown protein.